Welcome to the American Vision, brought to you by the TLBTV network, as sponsored by the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm broadcasting from my studio in my home in Cocoa, Florida, which is on America's beautiful Space Coast. And we're right across the Indian River from Cape Canaveral, where we can watch the space launches from our balcony. What a beautiful place to live. What a wonderful country to live in. Unfortunately, we have some issues in this country that need to be taken care of. And even though when I wrote my book, 2020, A Clear Vision for America, I said that every one of the 20 problems I wrote about have equal importance because everything our government does is totally integrated, even though our representatives, our elected officials don't see it that way. We have to have an economy because we need to pay for stuff. We need to buy stuff. So how are we going to manage this? Over the last 8 years, we've been told that the new normal, which is abnormal, is that a 1% growth is what we can expect from our economy. But when that happens, we don't hire enough people. And so too many people get left behind. They're not hired. And our jobs go overseas, or they go to low-paying workers, migrant workers who come in the country illegally. I know I'm not supposed to say they're here illegally, but they are. We've got 320 million people living in this country. Maybe it's a little more, maybe it's a little less. Everybody's got their own number, and everybody says, well, your number's wrong. Well, nobody's number is right because nobody knows who's in this country. So let's put it this way. If we ain't got money, we ain't going to be able to buy stuff. And if we can't buy stuff, we ain't going to live too good of a life. That's really what it boils down to. I want to see our economy jump-started. I want to see it grow. I want to see it grow fast. So the real issue in our economy is growth. You never hear them talking about that because they don't know how to do it. And they're not really that much in favor of it anyway because it's foreign to them. But we know that the economy has to grow. So now we're being told, oh, well, if we grow it from the current 1.9%, which I really am skeptical about, but okay, let's go with their 1.9%. 2% ain't going to make it. It's just not going to do it. So we say, well, it's going to go up to 3% with Trump's new tax plan and his new tax cuts. And we're going to now be able to add $3 trillion to the economy or to the tax revenues over the next 10 years. Does that really mean anything to anybody? Does anybody really care about that? It makes no sense whatsoever. What we have to do is we have to look at this from a point of view of real growth. And real growth is not 1 or 2%. That's meaningless. It's insignificant. We have to have a growth of about 6%. The way I have figured it out with the 2020 vision, the American vision, is that we would jumpstart the economy to 6 to 8%. And I talked about this on my last show and how that would affect the economy. What that would really do is bring in revenues, tax revenues of about $6 trillion a year. And by controlling our budget at about $4 trillion a year, we would pay off our national debt in 10 years. Now, a lot of people say, oh, we can't do that. We got to have a national debt because the politicians have told us, it doesn't make any difference if we owe money. Here's the difference it makes. We are right now paying, and nobody really knows the real numbers. So if you want to challenge me on this, challenge me and tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. But let's just say interest on the national debt is around 5%. Is anybody here paying 5% interest? No, if you got a credit card, you're probably paying somewhere between 13% and 29%. And if you're paying interest on anything else, well, you can get a home loan and they say it's like 4.75% or something silly like that. But is that really what it is when you pay? I gave the example of a $200,000 house, and after 30 years, you pay $500,000 for the house. Well, that's what we're doing with our national debt. We're paying all this extra money in. So 5% of $20 trillion national debt is $1 trillion. Okay, we're not paying maybe quite that much. But over the next 10 years, how much have we paid into interest in the national debt? Somewhere between $5 and $10 trillion. Okay, that's all money that has no value. It produces nothing. It gives us nothing. All it does is it just gives the banks more money. So I don't want the banks to have all the money. I want them to have, a way to have operating capital. I think that's important. But I don't want them to have a stranglehold over the American economy. And that's what they have. They're strangling the American economy, and our elected officials have really done this to us. They're the ones who have told us that this is a good thing. So why do we want to spend all that money, keep it out of the economy where it could be used to have people working and making stuff and servicing stuff and selling stuff? That's really what we want to have happen in this economy. So we receive no value from the money that's spent on interest on the national debt. And we receive no value for the money that's spent on preparation of taxes. So what's really important in the economy? It's growth. We have to grow the economy. How are we going to do that? We're going to have to change the tax code. We need a whole new tax code. The one we got ain't working, and it's not working at all for the people. It might be working pretty good for the Fed because they're doing pretty well. They're making a lot of money. And who owns the Fed? The banks. The banks own the Fed. Are you getting this picture now? Who owns what? That is the real issue here. I would like to see our economy grow at 6 to 8%. And I would like to see the capital gains tax at 0% so people aren't being penalized for investing in the American economy. I would like to see the corporate taxes at 0%. So the amount of taxes that are paid by corporations, if they do pay any, are not being paid by the people, because we're paying for these things when we buy stuff. And, the corporations are in business to sell this stuff, right? They make stuff and sell stuff. They service stuff. And if the taxes are on their bottom line, then they just add that into the cost of the product, and therefore it goes into the price that we pay. So that's one way it happens. The other way it happens is they lay off people or they cut the wages back. So if they cut everybody's wages back and they lay off some people and they raise the prices, how does that help the American people? Tell me, how does it help the American people? I don't think it helps the American people. I don't think it does anybody a bit of good, except the banks and our elected officials, the politicians. Have you ever noticed how rich these guys get? I mean, they come out of their lifelong careers as politicians with $1 million homes and $1 million plus bank accounts, investments, all this kind of stuff. How's that work? Well, we know how it works. Last time I talked about a guy, Chester Carlson. Really quite a guy. You ought to read up about this guy. He's really interesting biography, or just read a little bit about his life story. Chester Carlson's a guy that went in to sell the xerography process, and of course he got thrown out of the office. The director of the company went to, which happened, he went to a lot of companies, but the one I was really referring to was Kodak in the photography business. Can you imagine what Kodak would be like today if they had said, wow, what a great idea. Let's get into this. Let's do this. But no, they threw him out. They rejected him. You all really are having a hard time accepting what I'm telling you. And what I'm saying is you have to reject the tax code and everything the politicians and the pundits are telling you about the economy, because it ain't working for you. If it was working well, everybody would have great jobs. We wouldn't have a poverty level of 15% plus, and we wouldn't have a national debt that we're spending trillions of dollars on interest payments on. So Chester Carlson founded, it's kind of a complicated story. He got involved in a company that became the Xerox company, but let's just talk in general terms. Xerox employs about 35,000 people now. Kodak employs about 7,000. But Kodak was the leader at one time back in the 1930s and 40s, right? Weren't they? Weren't they the leader? And everybody knows Kodak. Kodak went bankrupt in 2011. Xerox didn't. Xerox has gross revenues of around $7 billion. $7 billion, no, I'm sorry, $35 billion a year. Okay, I screwed this all up. I got too many numbers floating around in my head. Xerox has a $7 billion revenues, annual revenues. Kodak has around $1 billion annual revenues. Which company really came out ahead on this? The one that rejected the good idea? Or was it the one who said, let's figure out a way to do this, and they did it on their own, kind of like what I did with this guy right here, 2020 Clear Vision for America, when all the publishing companies rejected me, and they rejected my book, and they rejected my vision. I went out and I published it myself, and I did it on my own. I did it with my own money. I took money out of my own savings account. I actually depleted my savings down to practically zero to bring you all this. Not complaining. I want to pay it back. I want to give you something for all the opportunities that I got in my life. So how are we going to really have a great country? We're going to have a great country when everybody's got good jobs and they can buy stuff and have a good standard of living. We can get the poverty rate down from 15% down to less than 2%. I know there's always going to be some, because some people just aren't going to get with the program. We know that, but we can get most of the people with the program. So 15% poverty level down to 2%. Annual growth from 1% to 2%, booming up to 6% to 8%. National debt eliminated within the next 10 years. No interest payments on national debt. Money goes out into the economy. People are buying better products, newer services, better services, and they're buying them, and their purchasing power has gone up. They're paying less money for their stuff. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that at all. That's really a good thing. So why, if that's such a good thing, why aren't we doing it? Well, nobody knows about it yet, or I guess a few people know about it if they read my book. So you guys are knowing about it now. Let's go back to what we're talking about, the average family making $50,000 a year. That's the average mean annual income for a household. Household annual mean income, you know, the government's got all these ways they describe stuff. It's how much money a family can make. Okay, That family that makes about $50,000 a year actually brings home somewhere around $35,000 a year after they pay out taxes. So if they do that, they don't get to keep a whole lot of their money. They're keeping less, somewhere around 70%, maybe even less. But let's just use this as an example. What's taken out of their money? Well, they have to pay their income tax for the federal, and in some states, the state taxes, and in some places, like I used to live in St. Louis, I had a business in St. Louis, everybody was charged a flat 1% tax on your income. Even the city got into it, right? And they would have charged 5% if they could have gotten away with it. They would charge 10% if they could have got away with it, but they got 1%. We also pay 15.3% in what's known as payroll taxes, which is FICA, F-I-C-A, which is Social Security and Medicare. But you say, no, we don't pay that much. We only pay 7.65%. Actually, the biggest majority of people don't even know what they're paying, but I'm telling you because somebody will look it up and they'll say, well, it's 7.65%. Hardly anybody even knows that. So the employer pays half of that, and half of that is deducted from the employee's wages. But really, the employee pays for all of that because the employer, if the employer didn't have to pay that 7.65% also, that money could go in the employee's wages, in their take-home pay. So as a consultant, one of the things we always did wherever we worked is we looked at how much is the benefit cost to the salary, or how much money are we actually paying, is a company actually paying out? What's the true labor cost, so to say? And the true cost of labor is not, for example, $10 an hour. It's more like $13 an hour. But the employee only ends up getting about $7 an hour. So what's the difference there? The difference is all these payroll deductions that are taken out of the employee's paycheck. And those payroll deductions are the true cost of, are included in the true cost of employment. And that ends up being somewhere around 30% on an average. In some industries, it can go as high as 90%, which it is in mining, for example, because of all the money they have to pay out. Let's say 30%. 30% of $50,000 is $15,000. So that's why your take-home pay is only $35,000 instead of $50,000. But if the taxes were zero, if your tax was zero and you didn't have to pay all those 100 plus taxes that you pay the federal, state, and local entities, you would actually be able to bring home $65,000 a year. So what would you rather bring home in your paycheck? If $65,000 a year, or would you rather bring home $35,000 a year? Well, I guarantee you, unless you really failed miserably in math, you're going to finally come to the conclusion that after you figure this out for a few days, that the $65,000 paycheck is a better deal than a $35,000 paycheck. That's the American vision. The American vision is to have you take home $65,000 a year instead of $35,000 a year. But now you're saying, hey, Bill, wait a minute. You're going to make me pay 20% on the stuff I buy. Yeah, I'm going to make you pay 20% on the stuff you buy that isn't food or rent or educational materials or medical supplies or medical expenses, pharmacy expenses, and so forth. So what's the biggest expense that the average family, especially low-income families, have? It's their food and rent, and their costs for their kids' education, whatever, they do have some expenses, and they have some expenses at the drugstore, with doctors, and they pay, money to, if they have a bank account, they have to pay a fee for that, a monthly service charge. So if all that stuff is tax-free, the stuff you buy that you're going to pay taxes on is probably going to be pretty darn low. In fact, if a person wanted to, and that's why I say this is voluntary, don't buy anything new and you don't have to pay any taxes. So don't buy a new car, buy a used car. Don't buy anything new. Don't buy a new house, buy a used house. The tax has already been paid on it. That's the whole idea of the American Vision tax plan. You pay tax on it one time and that's it. So how does this affect people? Okay, you're bringing home $65,000 a year. Well, to begin with, you're probably in debt about that much money in your credit cards and your car payments and all that. I'm not talking about your house right now, but just all the rest of that stuff. So you can start paying some of that stuff off because you're paying big interest on all that, on all those purchases that you made in the past that you have on your credit card bill or your car payments, and you receive no value for that. I want you to get value for your money. So you pay off the debt you owe. And when you pay off the debt you owe, you know what happens? You feel great. You feel good. You feel like, oh my God, I feel so good. I feel wonderful because I don't owe my money to all these people. Actually, I explained to you, it's not your money anyway, but it's their money, but you're not having to give all their money back to them as fast as you would before. So here's the deal. If you read the book and you read the chapter, and I explain all this to you, I give you all the numbers, all the math, the facts, the mathematics of it, and everything is really simple to explain. You will understand why getting $65,000 a year and paying 20% tax on, let's say, around half of that. Let's say you're paying tax on about $30,000 a year at 20%. That's $6,000. So now you end up with $59,000 instead of $35,000. So still in all, you're still almost doubling your take-home income. That's what it's all about. Now you say, well, wait a minute, what happened to Social Security on this thing? Well, Social Security is going bankrupt in a few years, so all you people are paying in the Social Security ain't going to get any money out of that. It's all wasted money. You're not going to receive any value from it because it ain't going to be there. It's going to be gone. The country ain't going to be able to give it to you, and they're going to ease us into this, and they're going to get us to a point where we accept it because we haven't taken the time to break our paradigms. So we say, well, wait a minute, we really want the rich to pay all the taxes anyway, because that's really what it's all about. We got to soak the rich. Remember what I told you about Pareto's law? 20% of the people pay 80% of the taxes. Why shouldn't it be that none of the people pay any of the taxes except the ones they want to on the stuff they buy? It just makes so much sense if you think of it that way. And think about how would it be if you were the only person who was an experiment and the country said and worked out a deal with your employer and said, hey, out of the $50,000 a year that you're making, it's somewhere around $1,000 a week, we're going to experiment with you. And so for the next 10 years, you ain't going to have to pay any taxes whatsoever. There's nothing going to be taken out of your paycheck. And instead of getting $35,000 take-home pay, you're going to get $65,000 take-home pay. What would you think about that? You'd say, hey, I think I'd like that deal. I'll take that deal. I'll be the person that they experiment with. Well, if it's good enough for one person, if it's good enough for you, that's good enough for me. That's good enough for you and me, that's good enough for our neighbors. And if it's good enough for our neighbors, it's good enough for everybody else. So then you get back to, yeah, but this corporate tax, that ain't going to work well. Well, wait a minute. You ever hear the politicians talk about these tax-free zones? How do you like that? They say, oh, we're going to have a tax-free zone. We're not going to tax you if you move your plan into our town city limits or our county. We're going to belay your taxes. We're going to give you a tax-free zone. Well, if that's good for one company in one city, why wouldn't that be good for all the companies in all the cities? They got to look at this stuff and let it make some sense and let it sink in a little bit. All right, the budget. I talked about that. $4 trillion a year is about what they're spending, but they're spending about 70% of it on the money, the entitlement money, the money that they're giving away. That's way too much money. And we're spending about 25% on money that that we need to run the government, the infrastructure, the military, everybody else. Well, that money is going to continue to grow. And the money that we're giving away people free, that's going to continue to grow. So that 5% difference in there is what we're paying on the national, is the interest we're paying on the national debt. Well, all these things are going to go up. So what's really going to happen? That 25% that we use to pay the government is going to have to diminish. And then pretty soon it's going to keep going down lower and lower until it gets down to eventually 1%. And when it gets down to 1%, you know what's going to happen then, don't you? There's no money left for anything. And we are officially bankrupt then. Then we can't pay our national debt. We can't pay anything. So we got to have a different tax code, and don't fall for this revenue neutral talk. I was going to say something else, but there might be some kids watching, and I don't want to scare the kids away or give them a wrong impression of what I think about the pundits and the politicians and all their code words like revenue neutral and everything else. Let's sum all this up. Would you rather just pay taxes on stuff you buy? So you say, wait a minute, what about the house I buy? I'm going to buy this house for $200,000. And you know what? You're going to charge me 20% tax on that. Yeah, that's what we're going to charge you. Okay. So wait a minute, that's $40,000 I'm going to have to pay. Yeah. How am I going to pay that? Well, we're going to work it out that you can have that financed along with your 30-year loan. So you pay it out over a period of 30 years. So how much am I going to be paying a year on that $40,000? Well, 40 divided by 30 years is how much? Somewhere around $1,500 a year. How much real estate taxes are you paying right now? Probably somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000. And let's say you're going to live in this house for your entire life. Okay. You're going to pay that real estate tax of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year forever. Forever. You're going to be paying, if you live to be as old as me and you live up into your 80s or 90s, you're still going to be paying it. Well, that's no good. Why not just pay it off in 20 years or 30 years and be done with it and then never have to pay it again? So then when you go to retire, you don't have to pay real estate tax on your house anymore. And you don't have to pay personal property tax on all your cars and your furniture and your good stuff. Think of that. Think of what a good deal that is. In the meantime, the government's going to get their money. So you say, well, wait a minute. The government needs a lot of money. Well, let's talk about taxes. Why do we have taxes in the first place? We have taxes in the first place because we have to fund the treasury of the national government, the federal government, the state government, governments, the county governments, the city governments. We have to pay taxes so we can fund them. So that's revenue. They need money to operate on. And I don't have any problem with that. I know they need some money to operate on. They just don't need to operate more than 2,100 federal agencies that we don't need. We don't need to finance that. So they have to collect revenue somehow. So if they collect revenue from 20% national retail sales tax, half of that money goes to the federal government, which pays for our military and infrastructure and all the other stuff that's important to pay for. And then the other percentage, 5% goes to the state, 5% stays in the county. So if I buy something in Brevard County, let's say I buy a toaster oven for $200. I don't know. That's a Cadillac oven, right? Let me just buy a cheap one for $100. Just an example, folks. I'm just using this as an example. We're going to pay 20% tax on that. Okay. 20% of that $100 is 20 bucks. 10 bucks is going to go to the federal government. 5 bucks is going to go to the state of Florida, and 5 bucks is going to stay in Brevard County. So I'm keeping my money at home. That's pretty simple. You want to know something? It doesn't cost $2.45 for every $100 to do that. It doesn't cost anything to collect that money. Let me tell you how that works. I sell a book for 20 bucks. I have to pay 7% sales tax, or I should charge 7% sales tax, and that means that I got to tell somebody that's giving me a $20 bill, yeah, but you got to give me another $1.40, and then I got to figure out how to make change and all that stuff. And because I hate taxes, I absolutely refuse to have somebody else pay taxes, so I pay that for them. Well, I don't pay it every time I sell a book, but what I do at the end of the, and I got mine set up on a quarterly basis. Most companies have it set up on a monthly basis. You can set up quarterly or even annually, but I do mine quarterly. So for every book I sell, let's say I sell $1,000 worth of books. I figure out 7% of that is 70 bucks, and I send a check to the state of Florida for 70 bucks. But I don't really do that. You know what I do? They've got a website set up. It's set up for everybody that collects sales tax in the state of Florida. And so I just go to this website and I type in my number, and it's like 18 digits long or 15 digits long, some crazy thing like that. And I put that in there, and I put my account number in there. And then I put in there, I sold $1,000 worth of books. That's just an example. And then I say, and I pay 7% on that. Actually, I pay 6.5% to the state and 0.5% to Brevard County, but and I got to break that out. It takes me a couple minutes. So by the time I do all this, I've spent, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes getting the site up and going through and putting all the information in, double checking it. And then what I do is I've got it set up so I put in my bank account routing number and a bank account number, and magically my 70 bucks goes to the state of Florida. How simple is that? Why can't we just do that on everything? So everybody that sells stuff, if I go to my bicycle shop, they sell stuff every day. You know, I don't know what their sales are, but at the end of the month, let's say they sell $100,000 worth of stuff. They've already collected 7% on everything, so they've collected, how much is that, $7,000? So they just go in, and in a few minutes, they enter that into the computer, and they enter their bank account information in there, and it magically goes to the state of Florida, which would then go, you know, under my tax plan, be 20%. The state of Florida would send 5% back to Brevard County and would send 10% to the federal government. and that's it. And it's all done electronically. It's flow through. That's what everybody's trying to achieve now, flow through. You know what flow through is? A telephone company. I worked at a telephone company as a consultant, and they were at 92% flow through. In other words, all their calls and all their business could be handled electronically, automatically, by you dialing a number and never talking to a representative or an operator or anybody like that 92% of the time. They figure if they can get up to 95% flow through, where 95% of all the calls need no operator assistant or no representatives, they saved a ton of money. And that's really what it's all about. The government can do the same thing. They can save money. So let me conclude this by saying, where there is no vision, the people perish. That's Proverbs 29:18. I love Proverbs. I love the Bible, actually. And if you should really read it. It's really got some neat stuff in it, especially the New Testament, but Proverbs are part of the Old Testament, I guess. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Where there is no American vision, the people are getting screwed. Got it? Where there is no vision, the people perish. Where you don't have the American vision, you're getting screwed. You're getting screwed by the government. You're paying too much money. And I don't want you to pay too much money. I want you to pay, I want you to not have to pay any money to them and really be able to spend that on your family. Spend it on nice stuff for yourselves. Nice clothes, nice cars, nice house, good food, anything you want to buy. You want to buy some recreational toys, like a four-wheeler or a Sea-Doo or something like that, go out and do it. It's fun. That's what life should be about, because you're working hard. And why are we working hard? Because our economy is booming and we got all that money in the economy. So the 2020 vision is my life, and my life is a 2020 vision. Thanks a lot for watching, boys and girls. God bless you, and God save our America.